Everyone has a bright light inside of them that deserves to be seen by the world. That's why it's time to shine the light on the extraordinary who are accomplishing phenomenal things. This is the Shine Out Loud Show with Lillian Ogbogo.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever in the world you are, and welcome to another episode of the Shine Out Loud Show with me, Lillian Ogbogo. Now, I am just thrilled to have a young woman who decided she was sick of the ugly black tights. She was tired of the ashy ones that made us look weird. She was tired of a single standard for beauty being targeted across the world, and said enough is enough after being in what she thought was one of the most diverse cities in the world and couldn't find a shade of tight to fit her. I am talking about the founder and creator of Share Chemistry, Tahlia Gray. So join me and welcome this phenomenal woman. Hi, Tahlia.
Hello. That was a lovely introduction. Thank you.
You are welcome. Now, I'm just excited because you've touched all my excitement buttons. I'm like, pretty tight, you like to travel, it's inclusive beauty. So yes, all excited.
Yeah. Great. And I'm so excited to be on your show.
Yes, even though, Skype and Talk, we're planning other things. And I said, not today, we're having the show.
Exactly. We can't let that stop us.
Exactly. So, you know what? Let's jump right in because, first of all, how did you go from learning and development to creating tights?
Yeah, so that's a really good question and one that I often get asked. So I got, shortly after finishing uni, I got a job in New York. Working in learning and development within an investment bank. So, of course, I was excited about being in New York. But one of the things that excited me most was having access to products that I couldn't find in London,
yes.
But I always wanted. And tights that match my skin tone was one of those things. And I thought, because it is one of the most cosmopolitan cities in the world, surely this is going to be an easy find, right? So and also working in the corporate world, it's something that I genuinely wanted every day.
Yes.
So I went looking in the department stores, pharmacies, etc., high and low, and I couldn't find anything. So for me, it was really a question of there's so many brands out there making tights and making nude tights in inverted commas, yet none of them were matching my skin tone. I would try a lot. I would accumulate hordes of tights, but every time I put them on, because sometimes in the shop you're looking at them and you think maybe that can do.
Yeah.
And then you actually put them in and you go into the broad daylight and it's like whoa.
You're like, wait, when did I become this shade of jaundice?
Yeah, exactly. So it really occurred to me that there weren't any brands out there. It was a massive gap, and I really wanted to build a brand that dedicated itself to celebrating the diverse shades of beauty that exist within women of color and empowering them to feel confident and gorgeous in their own skin.
Okay, so that's a transition, and
yeah.
So let me just let's get this out the way. How did you go from concept to delivery? Because you must have had a lot of challenges in between idea to delivery.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess, I came up with the idea and then I was like, okay, so how do I do this? So I decided to go with, because there weren't any shades that existed that I was happy with, I had to create my own.
Right.
And so that was the first step for me, creating the shades. And because I wanted to use some form of reference point, I looked to the makeup industry, because at the time they did have some broader shades. And so I would go around the makeup counters around London and collect little pots of foundation, and then eventually categorize them, grade them, group them, which eventually formed my 5 shades. So it was a real research and development process, but based on foundation shades, and that's how I developed my shades from there.
And you know what? It was so funny because I took your quiz online to kind of determine what my shade is, and I was like, I recognize, yeah, I've used that makeup, so I was in the right ballpark. It was so funny to actually see makeup being matched to tights. I was like, now this is interesting.
Yeah, but I guess it made sense to me because it was something that I used and women in my target market used, and so a good reference point to create something for tights.
Yeah. Okay, so Batman has his utility belt, we know. Wonder Woman has her lasso of truth. You believe that tights are an empowerment tool, so let's talk about this. How?
Yeah. Because, I guess tights are just something that we haven't always had access to in our shade. And so I've created 3 different products that are based on the pillars of a sheer chemistry woman. So I've got Radiance, which is a gloss tight, for all the times that you want to feel your most radiant. It's like the party tight. And then we've got Ambition, which is for everyday workwear, as the name suggests. And then Confidence, which is designed for the ultimate confidence boost to lift and shape your curves. So I want women to put on their power, really, essentially, put on their tights and feel their best self, feel their most radiant self, feel their most ambitious self, feel their most confident self. So in that way, that is your superpower, and you just feel unstoppable when you're wearing these bad boys. So, yeah, and it's just something that really celebrates your beauty in the act of putting it on and being seamless, and people not even realizing that you've got them on, but your legs looking 100, you know?
Exactly. You're looking at all shades of lovely, and people are like, oh. And yeah, I see your point. So, we're really, let's look at this. It's 2019, and we are still talking about the need for equal representation in makeup, in nude clothing, for all shades of brown women. Why are we still, in this moment, this era, still talking about this?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's actually crazy that we do have to still talk about it. And it's crazy that, brands like Fenty are revolutionizing the industry in 2018. But I think it's just about reclaiming our narrative and taking ownership of the products that we want to see in the world and that we wished existed when we were growing up. So I think because with the whole internet era, Black women and women of color are able to do a lot more in terms of create their own businesses and push them out to the world. And I think there's a wave of that happening. So I think instead of waiting for the big brands to actually acknowledge us, we're creating our own. So I think it's that reason that it's taken a bit longer than it should.
Mm-hmm. And and I like the fact that for you, it's not just about the tights, it's about the conversation behind it, it's about the stories. And which is why I found it fascinating that each tight has a story and a name that is not food related or cocoa. It's funny because it's one of my pet peeves, like the names of shades for makeup, tights, whatever, chocolate, cocoa, mocha, mahogany, all those things. And I often have conversations about this, and people are like, it's not that deep, I recognize with chocolate, but I just think it really fetishizes like brown skin tones and really reduces it to something sweet, and it's sweet, of course, but something that should be consumed. Yes. So I wanted to create a little bit more depth with my shade names, and I thought it was really important to do that. And in recognizing that women of color have
a story to tell and have traveled the world, and if they haven't, want to travel the world, I wanted to really find a way to encapsulate that. And for me, I love to travel, and I think it's made up a huge part of who I am, and the experiences that I've had. So I wanted to kind of take a snapshot of that and put it in the tights.
Okay.
So I've named, I've named the tights after cosmopolitan and desirable cities. So I have Havana Glow, Rio Romance, New York Soul, which is my shade, Nairobi Sunrise, and Parisian Dream.
Okay. So, and while we're sticking on travel, because your background is actually quite interesting. You are Australian Jamaican. That's two diametrically opposed places. So I'm curious, what were your parents doing in Australia? That's just my question.
Yeah, no, it's a good one. So my parents love to travel as well, and I think that's where I've inherited that travel bug from. So my parents, my dad got a job in the late 70s, actually in Papua New Guinea, which is just above Australia, attached to Indonesia. And my sister was born in Papua New Guinea, and then they went on to Sydney, where he got another job there. And then they ended up staying for 25 years. So they were just open to new opportunities, and they let that take them around the world. So I think that's definitely something that I've inherited, in the fact that your world is actually your oyster and you need to explore it. So yeah, that's why I've kind of explored the world on my own back after leaving Sydney and moving with my family back to London. But I think it was an interesting childhood in the fact that I never saw myself represented in like newspapers, magazines, on television. But it's funny because I didn't realize that I didn't see it until I saw it.
Right.
When I came to London, but I was just surprised that it still wasn't a mainstream representation.
Now, I get that. I remember the first time I went to Atlanta and I watched a commercial, and it was an entire black family looking happy. And I remember I was laying there watching the TV, and then it struck me, wait, that's a black family on TV doing a toothpaste commercial, and it's a good one. And I'm like, huh. You kind of have that moment where you're like, huh, okay.
Like, oh my gosh, like, and that's beautiful.
I know. You kind of pause and you're like, huh.
Yeah. I can actually remember a recent moment. I think it was about a year ago or 2 years ago. And I think it's Sky News, and there's two black presenters. And
right.
I need to say this, that they're two dark-skinned presenters. And they were co-hosting together.
Together?
And I actually had to take a photo because I was like, oh my gosh, this never happens. They're both on every day, but they're always, not together. So yeah, it's just moments like that when you're like, oh my gosh, this never happens, but it's a beautiful moment.
No, I absolutely agree. And I will go back on your Instagram and look for that picture because we need to see more of that. And and we are living in a time where it shouldn't be oh my God, did you see this? It should be, it's Tuesday, it's Saturday, so okay, it happens.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess that's what I really wanted to create with Sheer Chemistry. So I wanted to create images that I always wanted to see in mainstream media, and that I always wanted brands to present, but I just didn't see. So I've really tried to portray women of color as women who live in great places, do great things, look fabulous, But this is an everyday woman, and women that I know. I have friends, I have family who live these lives. So it's not necessarily an aspirational image. It's just a reality that we just don't see depicted. And normally, unfortunately, we're still seeing stereotypes of what it is to be a Black woman. But I just really want to normalize the lives that we actually live, and just represent that in a brand story.
You know what? That's actually very powerful. And this is why it has me very excited to interview you, because looking at your story, looking at your reasons why, there's a lot of conversation around this. And I think we need more and more women like you to say, no, this is not right. We need more. So, one of the things I was thinking about is, looking at how you got to where you are. Did you ever have any resistance to your ideas in the beginning?
Yeah, I think along the way I've had a lot of, it's funny because I'm really selective of who I take advice from. So, of course, there's been many times when people are like, well, how about all shades? I, as, a non-Black woman, also have problems finding my shade. But, and so it's kind of like, do I cater to the masses, or do I kind of stick with my guns and have I don't want to use the word niche because I don't actually believe my products are niche, but do I just focus on a specific demographic? And so I have had that kind of resistance in terms of, well, why aren't you catering for everyone? But I think in terms of building a business of any form, you need to be specific with your target market. And for me, this is a demographic, women of color, who I care deeply for, that I can really identify with in terms of the struggles and what challenges we face specifically. And then I know how to best kind of speak to them in the language that is just resonates. So I won't be catering to all shades. And I think it's important to celebrate women of color in specifically. Yeah.
And I think there's almost this need that we somehow have to apologize when we say, well, this is who we are catering to and for. And then there's the question is, why not all shades? Well, simply because if I go into any department store across the world, you are catered for, I am not.
Yeah. So it's also having that conversation. Because I find the question quite baffling. Because it's like, yes, exactly what you said. Like, if you go into any Boots Debenhams, there are shades of nude which are beige, which will suit the rest of the market. And I have no need to compete with those brands.
Mm-hmm. And now, speaking of competition, because you actually mentioned it earlier, you spoke about the fact, we've spoken about the fact that this is an emerging market where there are more and more brands coming into this sphere of catering for all shades of brown. Now, do you see it as an open playing field, or is it getting to a point of saturation, or is there still room for more brands of colors to emerge?
I think it's an open playing field. There's room for everyone. I do have a few competitors in this space, and I think, the more the merrier. Like it is when you go to buy a pair of trainers or even toothpaste or, a dress. Yes. We're bombarded with choice. And I think having choice is a wonderful thing. So I want us all to be able to go into the market and choose the brands that best suit us. So I don't think it's a bad thing at all.
No, okay. So and that's great, because I think we need more of your brands, their brands. We need more, as you said, more choice, but we also need to know that there are more incredible brands of color out there that we can go to across the world.
Yeah, exactly. And I think when it comes to a point where, where we can go into any high street around the world and select products that suit us, and that are designed to cater for us, I think that's going to be a beautiful day.
Yes. No, I absolutely agree. So going back to the business, going back to creating shared chemistry, how important has networking been for you and the business?
It's been incredibly important, and I don't think I would have been able to get where I am without it. So just to tell you a quick story and just the impact of networking for me, back when I was starting the brand, I did study business, so I did have kind of a background in what it takes to run a business, but the practicality is completely different. So right. I just wanted to immerse myself in spaces with business people and with people who were starting businesses. So I would go to events every week and go on Eventbrite. I don't know if you're familiar with Eventbrite,
yes,
or the listeners, but yeah, it's just an online platform which lists events around the country. So I'd go on Eventbrite, type in, fashion, business, networking, and then go,
Okay.
And one of the early events that I went to was at the London College of Fashion, which was called the Business of Fashion.
Okay.
And at that time, I was not sure about how to approach manufacturers. I had a list of manufacturers in the UK and their numbers, but I just sat on it because I didn't know who to trust, and I didn't know if they would, hear me talk and then be like, oh my gosh, that's a great idea, and then next week be doing it themselves. So I brought that question to this event, and as fate would have it, one of the women on the panel spent a lot of time talking about the difficulties that she's had finding a manufacturer, so much so that when she had a bespoke shirt company based in Mayfair, and she went into the US market, and the quality was so poor that they had to pull the shirts from the shelf.
Wow.
And it was an extreme story. And after that, she actually decided to buy a factory. I know it's not something that we can all do, but that's what she did, just so that she could, get a handle on the quality aspect. So I asked her the question, I'm looking for a manufacturer. I told her my idea, looking to find a manufacturer, but I just don't know who to trust. What would you recommend? And then she talked about NDAs and things like that. But then she was like, actually, I have a friend who's in the hosiery business. Speak to me afterwards, and I'll put you in touch. So she did put me in touch with this woman who at the time ran the biggest UK online distributor of tights.
Wow.
And then she then put me in touch with a whole host of manufacturers. So that was the power of networking for me. And that was in the very, very early days. So going to that event led me to my manufacturer, who I did all my product development with.
Okay. And I think, that's actually a story that you need to keep telling, and we need to keep hearing, because we need to remind ourselves the importance of networking. And I, for one, need that reminder constantly.
Yeah. Like, I would say most of my big wins was a result of networking.
Okay. So, looking at your tights, looking at the business of being in the business, the question I have is, how did you end up being supported by Virgin Startup as well?
So I guess this is something, when you're starting a business, you have to think about where your money is going to come from and how you're going to financially support the growth of the business. And Virgin Startup is actually backed by a government initiative. So I actually just applied to the program, and started started getting the ball rolling not just before launch, but while I was developing the product. So Virgin Style is a great organization, and I ended up getting a loan from them.
Mm-hmm.
One of the good things, though, is they give you business support throughout the process of applying and I think for me that was about 6 months, 6 to 10 months.
Okay.
But I was challenged throughout that process. So it wasn't just a case of applying and them saying, oh, that's a great idea, here's the money. It was like, okay, well, you assume that you're going to buy X amount of tights and it's going to sell. What proofs do you have? Like, what can you tell me now that's going to guarantee that the stock that you buy tomorrow is going to sell?
Yeah.
So they actually made me do a lot of market testing. And on the back of that, I did a crowdfunding campaign through Kickstarter because I had to prove my concept before they actually gave me the bulk of the startup loan. Mm-hmm. So it was a good way in just proving my concept. And there's a lot of extra hoops that I wouldn't have jumped through had they not challenged me. And I think it was a good thing.
Okay. Now, I think, yes, challenges can be good, even though they can have moments where they feel like they're...
Yeah, I remember. I think after my meeting, one of my first meetings with my business advisor through Virgin, and he said, like, what can you tell me today to guarantee that your products are going to sell? I think I actually cried after that meeting. Really, yeah. And it sounds, because the thing is, you have so much like conviction in your idea. So sometimes when someone challenges you, you're like, how dare they? But it was coming from a good place. So it actually really helped me build the foundations of a strong business rather than just kind of think, oh, yeah, it's going to be fine, you know?
But, you've just raised something really important when you talked about crying after going to a major meeting like this. And I remember I interviewed somebody else who spoke about an experience almost similar. And we almost feel like we have to be ashamed of the fact that, oh, my God, this is what happened. This is where we are. And this is the emotion that I felt. And I'm thinking, well, no. The tears are necessary. You're a human being. And actually, sometimes it does hurt when somebody it almost feels like someone's taking a sharp pin to the balloon of your idea. And you're like, ow.
Yeah. So I think you just have to remind yourself, well, a lot of the time it's coming from a good place. Like they want you to win, but they just want you to kind of put the processes and do the necessary planning before you kind of launch it out to the world and spend a whole load of money. So it's kind of a form of protection. But in terms of just feeling the emotions and, entrepreneurial life is such a roller coaster, and there's huge highs, but there's huge lows.
Yes.
And so like you will cry. I cry, not all the time, but frequently, and I think it's definitely important to keep balance and to keep, remind yourself of keep a good perspective on things and take a step back sometimes. Because sometimes in like the situation that we're talking about, you can feel like someone's taking a personal shot at you, but really it's just helping you develop your business to the best it can be. So I think you have to just keep that in mind and not take things too personally. But it is an emotional roller coaster, definitely.
Okay, so from that emotional low to your high of having the Kingdom Choir performers end up wearing your tights for the royal wedding, that must have been some serious proud mommy moments. How did that come about?
It was incredible. Like, honestly, like definitely a highlight of last year. So one of my team members, Shafra, her cousin is actually in the royal wedding. So I guess this is another example of networking.
Yes.
And so her cousin and some of the members were like, it would be great if we could have tights. So it was just a case of her calling and being like, Tahlia, can you provide like 30 pairs of tights tomorrow? And and so I don't think she could disclose all the details at the time. She was just like, it's an event. Can you do it? And I was like, yes.
Okay.
When, where? So later on, I was made aware that it was actually the royal wedding. But so it was just a case of getting a random call one Wednesday, and just saying yes.
Okay. So the moral of the story is say yes when you're asked something really strange and random.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's not the first time that something like that has happened. And I think you just have to say yes. Because at the end of the day, you might gift some products and maybe nothing happens. But if something does happen, I think it's worth just jumping on it.
Exactly. And besides, you can say the Kingdom Choir performers, they're badasses on their own.
You know?
They were wearing your tights at the royal wedding. Whether you're a royalist or not, there was a soft spot for that particular wedding. There are reasons.
Yeah, oh my gosh, like it was the best. It was the best wedding. It was a black wedding.
Yes.
In terms of the representation. The Reverend, oh my gosh.
The Reverend took it home. I basically spent the whole day kind of flitting in and out. And then when I heard the Reverend, I'm like, there are people in that room thinking, how do we leave now? Can we go home? Because they were not expecting it.
No, they should have brought their packed lunch. But it was a huge moment, I think, for the culture.
Yes.
And I was really, really honored to be part of that moment through the Kingdom Choir, because they did a phenomenal performance. And so I couldn't have planned that,
Yeah, I think that was just an amazing moment. I think it's something that we need to just be celebrating. Like, yes. And those performers, oh dear God, they can sing.
Yeah. And they've gone on to do amazing things.
Mm-hmm.
They have now sewn to Siny. They did like a Coca-Cola deal.
Yes.
And I think
they're
for British Airways thing.
Yes, they're on the new British Airways commercial. I'm like, go ahead,
so,
all of
like,
you.
they're going from strength to strength to strength. So I'm so proud of them and so proud that we can collaborate from time to time.
Awesome. Now, okay, so, we're talking tights. We're talking about undergarments for women. We're talking stuff that confuses men on a good day.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. Most of you are like, why we don't... So how do you have any how-to guides for your male customers who are coming in to buy for their shades of brown women in their lives?
That's a good point, because I think I need to maybe spell it out a bit more for men. So normally I just direct them to the same guides that I have for everyone, which is the foundation and celebrity shade match. And I think for men, the celebrity shade matches are a little bit more easy to do. To get their heads around. So for those who don't know what I'm talking about, so I've got 5 shades of brown, and for each shade I've aligned it to the relevant shade of MAC, Bobbi Brown and NARS makeup. So let's just say you wear a MAC shade NW45. I've aligned that to New York Soul. So, okay, I wear NW45, New York Soul. Also, you can be like, okay, well, I'm a similar shade to Michelle Obama. I'm a similar shade to Jordan Dunn. And so then yes, I'm New York Soul. However, if your partner is more a shade like Beyonce or Rihanna, you can be like, okay, well, your partner's color shade is going to be Rio Romance. So that hopefully gives a guide for men as well as women to find the right shade for their significant other.
Right, okay. And speaking of Michelle Obama, you were one of the incredibly lucky women who managed to get tickets. I'm not envious at all. Not at all.
It was like, honestly, there are some moments in life where you just have to be like, thank you, Jesus. Because you can't, those tickets were like gold dust. And I can't actually claim that it was me who got the tickets. My sister, who I went with, who is just amazing at doing stuff like this and just an amazing person in general. So she got the tickets, and we'd both set our alarms that morning when the tickets went on sale. I was on my phone, my laptop, my computer, and she was doing the same with her respective devices, and we were kind of checking in with each other where we were in the queue. And I was like 18,000 and something, and she was like, oh, I'm 50th. And I was like, what? Oh, stay there. So, yeah, she ended up getting tickets, and we went along to the event, which was just incredible, just to see Michelle Obama and Chimamanda on one stage was actually made my life, not just my year, my life.
But then, let's kind of turn that lens a bit around a bit, because Chimamanda is on the stage, Michelle Obama is on the stage, and I cannot imagine just how amazing it was. But can you imagine just turning around and looking in the room of how many amazing Black women and brown women that were in the room in that moment at that day?
It was overwhelming. Like, honestly, it was, and even the recollection of it is overwhelming. Like, honestly.
So for me, I know I missed out. And I won't even lie, green with all shades of envy. But I am glad that somebody I'm talking to went.
Yeah, it was an incredible night. So you would look through the crowds and you would see, like, I saw Michaela Cole, and I saw like Monroe Bergdorf, and I saw Kanye King and June Sarpong. Like, everyone was in the crowd, and it was that was crazy.
Yeah, and we need more events like that put Black women in the room together, being together.
Yeah.
We need more events like that.
Yeah, because I think they're very few and far between. I think the only other time when I felt similar was seeing Chimamanda on stage at South Bank, which was another incredible moment. And then I think the only other time is Black Girl Fest, which
is coming up this year as well. It's coming up soon, isn't it?
Yeah. And the funny thing about Black Girl Fest, which I've been to now for their first 2 years, and Sheer Chemistry exhibited last year, but the inspiration behind Black Girl Fest is actually from one of the Chimamanda talks. So one of the co-founders of Black Girl Fest, Nicole, she went to a talk of Chimamanda and felt the Black Girl magic and wanted to replicate that in some way, shape or form. So for her, it was the impact of being in the room that inspired Black Girl Fest.
And that's powerful, because you never know what can be inspired, what connections can be made, yes. So, it's just, I think you're right, we need more and more of these events.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's powerful.
Okay, so what drives your creativity? What drives you to create?
I think for me, it's really serving women of color. So, on those days that I think, I can't do this anymore. And I think we all have those days, or is it really worth it? And then I think about, our message, which at its core is creating a more diverse perception of beauty and empowering women to feel confident and gorgeous in their own skin, which I think is we still haven't really achieved, like, in terms of the community on an everyday level. And so I think just looking back to the aim and the mission of the business, I think that's what really inspires me to continue to be creative and continue to just go, and continue to do what I do. Yeah, I think that's worth it. That it really makes it all worth it.
Okay. And that's actually powerful words. It's, sometimes you need to have those reasons to get up. Now, and we are speaking about those days that when they come, they feel heavy, they feel hard. So how do you personally deal with your doubts?
So I use affirmations a lot because I think I struggle a lot, and I was talking to a friend yesterday about imposter syndrome. Yesterday was significant because I gave a guest lecture at my old university to the MBA students there.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. And so I think little old Tahlia giving a guest lecture to MBA students. I haven't even done an MBA. And so then I find myself talking all this negativity to myself. And so then I have to, kind of get out of that and be like, I am enough and I am smart and I have achieved, and just talk to myself in a way that really hypes me up. Because I think it's easy for self-doubt to creep in and negativity to creep in, and then you're kind of throwing your duvet over your cover and you're like, don't answer the email, or you say no and you make up an excuse and you're just self-sabotaging, which I do actually do. And so it's just really speaking to yourself positively. And one of my intentions this year is to speak to myself in a way that I would speak to a friend.
Yes.
Because I find that I'm very negative to myself, extremely negative, and I talk very harshly to myself. And so treating myself kindly and speaking to myself kindly, and giving myself that reassurance, I think has been key.
You know what? That's actually that. Let me say it this way. You need to say that again so the people in the back can hear you.
Yeah. So yeah, no, it's all about just speaking to yourself in a way that reinforces the greatness that's inside of you and allows you to enter the world in a way that makes an impact. And I think we all have greatness inside of us, and we all deserve to do well and accept those opportunities that we deserve. But I think in order to accept those opportunities, we need to actually see those opportunities as being for us.
Yes.
So I'm just going to use the university situation because I felt like I was way out of my depth in terms of when the proposal came to me via an email, and I was just like, what, why me? And then it's like, but why the hell not me? You know what I mean? And the reality is, I did have the skills, and it went exceptionally well.
Wow.
And the feedback from the students was like, wow, you've actually covered everything that we've learned on the MBA program, but given to us in a very practical way. So that was the feedback that they gave. But if the way that I was talking to myself when the email landed in my inbox is like, I don't have the skills and knowledge to deliver this.
Exactly. And I think if we actually analyze sometimes the words we say to ourselves, if a stranger or somebody else says exactly the same thing, we will fall out with them. But yet we accept that from ourselves to ourselves.
Yeah. And because I've caught myself and the way that I speak to myself a few times, and I would never, ever, ever speak to even someone that I didn't like the way that I speak to myself sometimes, which is deep. You know what I mean?
Exactly. It's wrong. It's just wrong.
Yeah. And even the way that I tell myself off, like it's really harsh. So I think once you kind of acknowledge that and really like shine a light on that, you can start to, and I'm not saying it's going to happen overnight because I still catch myself like swearing to myself and all kinds of things, but which I don't normally do in my day-to-day language. But I think once you kind of acknowledge that, you can start to change it for the better. Yeah.
Okay. You know what? I like this. This is honest conversations, and we all do it. And it's, I guess, is getting to that place, like you said, once you see it, you address it. Now, let me ask you this. 2018 was a year for self-care, it seemed. But, when we look at it seriously, we all need a level of self-nurturing. So with everything you do, how do you incorporate self-care into your life?
That's a really good question. And I think since I've gone full-time in the business, which was only in November, it's been more and more important to make sure that I'm doing things for me on a weekly basis. And how I personally do that is I run. Running is a really, really important part of my self-care regime, and something that I do multiple times a week. Normally in the morning, I go. I've got a local. What do I call it? It's bigger than a park, but let's just call it a park. Where I run around and get some fresh air, and I see green, which is really makes such a difference, because when I come back and I start my day, I've got a clear mind.
Right.
And I can for me, I call running a meditative practice, because I find that it really helps me think about ideas, clarify things, and I really kind of can talk to myself in a way that's very open and honest, and I give myself that time and space. So I'm also a part of a running crew called Random Crew, which is based out of Shoreditch. So I meet up with them every Tuesday as well. So that's like a part of the week, which if someone's like, can you do lunch, can you do dinner, drinks, I've got an event. If it's on Tuesday, the answer is always no, because I've got running. And so that's something that I'm firmly committed to. And I find that it really invigorates my week. It's wonderful.
Okay. So I know you also do, I have a picture of you from your Instagram. I just need to ask questions. Where you're about to take off, fly, you look like you were hanging air in this picture. I was looking at this picture, color me impressed, but girl, you took flight.
Okay, so the picture you're referring to is a picture of me jumping in the air in the district. Yes. So a friend of mine from Random Crew actually invited me to go to the Peak District, I think in October, November time. And it was something that I'd never done before. I've never been trail running. And trail running essentially is running not on the road, kind of in the wild. So she invited me to go trail running in the Peak District with 3 other friends. And I said, yeah, that sounds like fun. And what I didn't know is it would just be one of the best experiences ever. And I think because, we do live in a city, we live in London, and there's a lot of pollution, and sometimes we forget what fresh air is. I know that I do. And so when I went to the Peak District, and so it was basically a 20K run up and down mountains. And I think for most people, they're like, what the hell?
20K.
It was so good in terms of it was like being at one with nature, and feeling the wind whip your face and the fresh oxygen in your lungs, and really being like that much closer to heaven. It sounds really extreme, but that's how good it felt. It was wonderful, and I can't wait to go back out, not necessarily to the Peak District, but something of that nature, and just be running wild. That's what it was like. It was wonderful.
I just looked at the image. I was like, girl is doing some hang time here. That was all. That was as far as I got. I was like, wow.
Yeah. But I guess if we put it as like an analogy of how high I felt that day in a good, natural way. I think that really encapsulates that.
Yep. I think it does. I think it does. I really do. Because you looked relaxed and happy, and I read the caption. So, yes, I think that definitely was a good day for you.
Yeah, definitely.
So, what are you currently reading, or what was the last book that you have read?
So I'm currently reading the 10X Rule. So it's all about, I don't even know, do I have it in my bag? I don't have it in my bag. I can't even tell you who wrote the book, but it's the 10X Rule. So it's all about doing 10 times the work and putting in 10 times the effort that you currently put in to achieve maximum results. And it's a really, really good book, because I think sometimes we say that we're working, in inverted commas, but I think being really intentional and precise about what works, what good work looks like, and what a productive day looks like is really key. So does it, like, a productive day include, 20 emails to prospective buyers and like 10 emails to new customers, or meetings with 5 meetings with X? I think you really have to define what it is. And so when I looked at what I was actually doing and times that by 10, I think that's when I started producing real results.
Wow. Okay, so I'm going to actually search out for the book, and according to my Amazon, it's saying it's the 10X Rule by Grant Cardone.
That's the one.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll be adding that to my Audible.
Yeah, no, it's really good. And I also just finished reading the Michelle Obama book, which is wonderful, and everyone must own one copy and read and devour every word.
Okay. You've heard what Tahlia said. Go and buy the book. Please, people, this has been my bugbear since this has come out. Stop sending around the PDF copy. Go buy the book. Buy the book. That's all I have to say.
I actually have 2 copies, and I bought 2 copies.
Good. See? Buy the book.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we've come to that point in the show where we talk about our So Loud moment of the week. What is your So Loud moment?
So my So Loud moment, because we're shouting out someone else, right?
Yes.
Yes. So my So Loud moment is actually my sister, Kamara Gray, who is a phenomenal businesswoman in her own right. So she owns a youth dance company called Artistry Youth Dance, which really acts to develop the skills of aspiring Black dancers in classical dance styles, so ballet, jazz, and contemporary. And she's doing a wonderful job. She's just reached her 5th year anniversary. But one thing that she has recently launched is her theatre, AYD Theatre Club. I don't think that's actually what it's called, but that's what it is. And so she will be taking groups of young Black dancers and exposing them to theatre shows with Black cast members, so that they can see themselves on stage and have role models to aspire to. So she is doing phenomenal work in developing Black dancers and getting them into further education in dance, and just really celebrating their artistry and their skill. So that's who I wanted to shout out today.
And I think that's a very wordy shout, So Loud moment. So let's get the round of applause going right there. Oh, that is actually really amazing. I think, yes, we need more people doing incredible things like that, because I know the impact seeing Hamilton had on me. I know the impact of seeing the first time I saw Porgy and Bess on stage. It was, yes. Yeah,
so I think, it's great so she's been doing this for 5 years, and I've been involved in helping her along the way, and just to see some of her early dancers and see where they are now, like, it's just incredible. There's one of my favorite stories is a young lady who lived in Norfolk, a mixed race girl. And she would travel to Islington every week from Norfolk, was tremendously dedicated, ended up getting an offer to a performing arts school for university years, and has just graduated, and now is working professionally as a dancer. And why I say that story is because this young lady was not necessarily very involved in she didn't have much exposure to culture.
Right.
Let's just say that. And being in Norfolk, you're not going to get that exposure. So being able to be in a space where she felt welcome and she felt celebrated and comfortable while doing, jazz, contemporary and ballet was important for her. And then seeing the show, she was like, actually, I can do that. I can be in The Lion King, and I can be in Memphis, or I could be in Motown, or I could be in Dreamgirls, but they see a variety of shows over their involvement with the company and get to perform as well. So, yeah, that's just one case where it's had a tremendous impact and really changed the trajectory of someone's life, essentially.
Yes. And that, the power of that is just your sister is actually changing, not just doing what she does for herself, for her business, but she's, like you said, she's changing one person's life, which has the repercussion of that is actually, you can't calculate, because we don't know how far this young girl is going to go, this young woman is going to go, who she's going to influence next, and all because of what your sister has created in the first place.
Yeah. So, she's a huge inspiration, and so I think everyone should know about it.
Yes, I definitely agree, and maybe we should talk about getting your sister on the show.
Yeah.
See what I did there?
I like that. That was smooth. Very smooth. No, it's been fun. It's been really fun to be on the show.
Oh, thank you. So I have just a couple more questions, and then I shall let you go and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Now, what's next for Share Chemistry?
So, what I've been focusing on in the past, since I left my job in November, is really, my goal for this year is to really penetrate the UK market. So I've been talking to a lot of buyers throughout the country. I was in Manchester this week to get Share Chemistry on high street around the country. That is my goal, and that's what I'm working on. And it seems like it will be happening soon.
Whoop, whoop. That's what we like to hear. Seriously, that's what we like to hear. And speaking of how...
Watch this space.
Awesome. And speaking of getting your hands on Share Chemistry right now, how can one do that?
So I sell online, and so I'm currently selling all the product range on sharechemistry.com. So please do visit the website, and all the information about the brand and the products and the shades is all there.
Okay. And you're also, do you still have the partnership with the W Hotel?
No, that was just for our launch, actually. So for those who don't know, we launched in collaboration with the W Hotel, which was a great partnership. We did the launch event there, and they also sold our products for what was supposed to actually be a month. But it was extended to 6 months, which was wonderful. So after the 6 months, unfortunately, we weren't selling from there anymore, but still on our websites, and we're always out and about in London doing various pop-ups.
Okay. So you are a traveler, and, Brazil and New York seems to have your heart. So here's my You're like, oh yes. Okay, so since we're there, what is it about these two cities that draw you, or places that draw you consistently?
Oh, So,
did I just throw you?
And so I think I need to give a bit of a backstory. So Brazil, I went to Brazil during my sandwich placement year for university. So basically, I was on a 4-year course. During my 3rd year, it was compulsory for me to go abroad somewhere. And I always dreamt about going to South America, and so was looking for internships in the South American region, and I ended up in Brazil. It's not where I anticipated, because I had been practicing Spanish the whole year before, and that's the only country that speaks Portuguese. But it was welcome, and I think one of the things that I love about Brazil is just the culture, the dynamics of their culture. Like it's so mixed, and it's so varied, and it's so rich. In terms of just culture, and I ended up in a city called Santa Maria, which is nothing like you would imagine a Brazilian city to be. It is a German influenced city, so the south of Brazil is quite German and Italian influenced. So the architecture is quite European. The people look European, so there's a lot of blonde hair, blue eyes going on, and it's cold. It gets cold.
Okay, note to self.
Which was a shock to me. But I think for me, I think it was where I was in my life, and it was just a completely different culture in the fact that I didn't know any Portuguese when I landed. I learned the language in 10 months, and I really fostered beautiful relationships with people, and I gained a whole family when I was there. I think I got to travel around the country a lot, so I got to see the diversity of it, and just the music, the food, the people are just so welcoming, and I think that's something that, as a Brit, essentially, it really took me back, because like I was there. Let's just say I met someone on my first day, and they were like, "Oh, like it's so nice to meet you. You should come round. You should meet my family." And I'm kind of got my back up, thinking, "What do you want from me?" But really, they're just inviting you round.
They're like, "Lunch, come and eat." You're like, "Why? What do you want to eat me?"
Yeah, exactly. And so I think, and I realized how closed and European I was, because these people were genuinely being nice and welcoming and inviting me into their homes, which is a normal thing to do. And I was like, so of course I loosened up very, very quickly. But I think it was just the culture that I fell in love with. And I think, so I told a story recently on my Instagram about, well, it was a brief story about the inspiration of Rio Romance, the shade, because one thing that I didn't say is these cities are named after my favorite cities, and I have a personal story about each and every one of them. So Rio Romance, at the end of my trip, my family tends to meet me wherever I am. So my family had planned a trip to Rio to meet me. I wasn't staying in Rio, but I traveled to Rio to meet them because I hadn't been to Rio yet. So I arrived a few days early because I wanted to explore the city by myself. And at the time I spoke Portuguese, so I felt quite comfortable in being by myself for a few days. But it was really, it was a magical experience because it was the first time I felt that I had the opportunity to travel by myself. And it was a time where I'd finished my internship. I'd felt that I'd grown a lot. I'd thrown myself into the unknown, and I'd thrived. And so there was a particular day, which I will always remember. I'd just gone to Copacabana Beach, and I was staying on a huge hill in a hostel, and I was walking with my towel and up this hill, and I could hear some drumming and some percussion instruments. And then there was like a street party, and there were people dancing in the streets, and it was really impromptu, and there were people selling stuff. And it was a Sunday afternoon. The sun was shining. I'd just gone to the beach. The music was playing. I danced with probably a 90-year-old man who was so happy, and just everything was right in the world. And it was the most kind of carefree and materialistic that I've ever been in my life. And so Rio Romance really signifies kind of that day and how I felt. So Rio Romance is about being in love with the person that you've become and being happy with where you are and who you are in this current moment. So it's not necessarily a romance with anybody else, but it's the romance that you have with yourself. And I will just always remember that magical day in Rio when I was by myself, but I was so happy, so happy. And I think that's kind of what is possible when you kind of venture into the unknown and really explore who you are. Because I remember being so kind of not scared, but it was a horrible experience in the beginning when I didn't know the language and people were trying to talk to me and I had no idea with what they were saying. And I really wanted to be involved and I really wanted to be outgoing and I really wanted to make friends, but I just didn't understand. So I couldn't communicate. So it's kind of like being mute. So yeah, and I guess as an English speaker, we kind of take it for granted. We expect people to speak English, but when I went to Brazil, 80-90% of people didn't speak English. They didn't speak English. So I had to learn.
That sounds like a very, very powerful, powerful story and a powerful reason to be in love with Brazil. Yeah. So it was really, it was kind of a coming of age trip. And I discovered a lot about myself and, it was just a beautiful time. But it was really going back to the basics. I think that's why I loved Brazil. It was all about going back to the basics and really loving that, because it wasn't about where I was in Brazil. It wasn't about the material things. It was about community and it was about family and it was about friendship. And that's what I got from my experience. Okay. Tahlia, I think on that note, this is just the perfect place to end the show.
Wonderful. Well, it's been wonderful. I've really thoroughly enjoyed our chat.
You know what? I've been so excited. The moment I realized you were coming on the show and getting everything together, I'm like, I really, really, really am looking forward to speaking with you. And yes, I could have you back on the show, time and time again. So please stay connected. Let us know what is new and wonderful with Share Chemistry. I will be going out to get a pair of for myself, and I think maybe a pair or more. We'll talk about it. But yes, it's really been an honor to have you on the show. And like I said, we need more women like you talking about representation, the standards of beauty, and also standing up for all shades of brown women. So it's been awesome.
It really has been. So thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. And so, ladies and gentlemen, it's a wrap. The fantastic, phenomenal Tahlia Gray has been on the show talking about Share Chemistry and the brand that is taking on representation for all shades of brown women. Go on her website, look at the product, buy one, buy two, buy three, buy them all. You won't regret it. It's time that we stop stockpiling the black tights and the weird ashy ones that claim to be nude. Let's stop doing it and get stuff that fits us. So Tahlia, once again, I'm so honored to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me again. But it's been a pleasure.
Awesome. So folks, it's a wrap. Join us same place, same time next week. We're going to be back at our regular time at 8 p.m. as we have another amazing guest coming to the show. So if you want to connect with us, if you love the show, if you even have a comment, send us a message. You know where to find us. We're on Shine Out Loud on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. You can hit us up, drop us a message, or even go onto our website of shineoutloud.tv. Tell us what you think. Tell us if you want to be on the show, and we will be back same time next week. Bye.
You've been listening to The Shine Out Loud Show. If you want to connect with us or let us know what you thought of today's show, be sure to follow us on Twitter at Shine Out Show.